In our practice today, we're going to be taking a look at a Japanese tradition called Sashiko. Sashiko is this Japanese embroidery mending process. Sashiko translates to little stabs, which I think is just a really, really great name for this process. But it's basically this functional embroidery, right? It is decorative, yes, because you see these wonderful designs and patterns, but the main focus is a reinforcement stitching, basically. So what happens during this process is that you're taking these worn out clothes, textiles, and you're increasing their strength. And by doing this layering, this mending, by doing this type of stitching, you're making the piece stronger, right? And what I love about this, and this is a perfect example of sashiko on this kimono here. And then the little picture on the right is just kind of a zoomed in version of that. But what I really like about this practice of sashiko is that it's just a really great illustration, a really great visual that just because something is worn down or worn out, it doesn't mean that it is worth less. Um, and I think there are a lot of really nice Japanese traditions that kind of focus on that idea. I'm reminded of the kintsugi practice, where it's a Japanese practice where you take broken ceramics, broken clay, and you mend it using gold. And so the idea is that just because it was broken, again, it's not worth less. It's in fact more precious than it was before. And I think that's the same idea here with the Sashiko. Again, just because it is worn down, just because it needs mending, doesn't mean that it's worth less. By taking the time to mend, especially in a way like this, it's showing strength, right? It's showing resilience. This piece is surviving and it's stronger now. It's stronger than it was. And what's really beautiful, I think, about this process is that it's not just mending to fix something, mending something that needs mending, but it's also this really decorative art that holds a lot of meaning. So each of the patterns or designs that you see in this stitching process, they are symbols for something, right? So the mender is not just mending, but also putting this kind of wish or blessing on the wearer. And so this right here, this image here, has a kimono that has sashiko on it, these beautiful embroidered designs. And on the right here is a zoomed in image of this kimono. Now, originally, traditionally, it was white cotton thread on indigo dyed cloth. And so you see this cloth that's this really rich, deep blue, purple almost. And so that's how it was done traditionally. But now those textiles vary in color and in content. And so we see all sorts of designs and patterns and colors coming out of this practice now. But all these patterns are based on, many of these patterns are based on these geometric shapes. And there are a lot of common designs here. And so I want to invite us to just kind of take a look at this. And I know it's hard to see on the kimono, it's hard to see all the detail, but even just looking at this zoomed in image here, we can see two really nice designs. And these are very common designs. This image on the top, and I don't know if anyone can see my cursor, but this top image right here, the design is called persimmon flower, right? And so what it symbolizes is prosperity and good health and abundant harvest, right? So seeing this pattern is not just a pretty pattern, but it's also carrying meaning, right? It's a symbol that's carrying meaning. This one on the bottom, this design on the bottom that looks like little X's um, or cross, like boxes, is called Koshi. It is a lattice or a check. It represents lattice or checks. And what it symbolizes is protection and stability and longevity, right? And so when you see a garment that has both of these mending stitches on, you know that there's more meaning than just a pretty pattern. And that's what I think is really cool about this process, is that like it's so much deeper and meaningful, so much more meaningful than just stitching, just mending. Mending is nice, right? For sure. It's nice to have mended clothes. But I think there's something really special about taking the time to do these different stitches. And what it's doing is making this garment, this textile, this fabric, it's making it more precious. It's making it special, giving it meaning. And I think there's something that's really nice about that. I want to hop over to this next one. I'm going to hold this up for a while. I want to invite us again to look at these. And I'm going to go through just a couple of these different designs, these common designs, and just talk a little bit about the meaning before we go into our practice today. And we're going to go from the left to the right. And so if you see my cursor, you see this little star pattern here, this almost diamond shape. This one actually represents a hemp leaf, right? And so what it symbolizes is growth and good health. And what's really cool about this design is that it's traditionally used in children's clothing. And so even though it represents growth and good health, when it's on children's clothing, it's like wishing good health as they grow, which is really, really cool, right? It's this cool pattern, this really neat looking pattern, but it holds meaning. Right? This one and the second one here represents waves, right? And so the symbolism, what it symbolizes is resilience and peace and good fortune, right? And one of the things I want to like really point out in this wave pattern here is that if you take a close look at it, you'll notice that there are different numbers of lines in each of these wave patterns. And some of the lines are a little wonky. They're not all perfectly smooth. They're not all even. And I think, again, that's just a really nice illustration that it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not about making it exactly the same. It's about the intention behind it, right? This representation, this symbolism around peace and resilience, right? Perfection is not even part of it. And this middle one right here, these little crosses that we see, these T's, this is another common design. It represents prosperity and growth and lasting relationships, right? The one next to it, the one that looks like arrows, it actually represents bird feathers, and it's a symbol of protection and good luck. And then the one on the end, I definitely want to highlight too. This one is not exactly a geometric pattern. It's something that's a little more organic, but it represents reeds or pampas grass, and it symbolizes resilience and flexibility. And what I want to really kind of emphasize as we're looking at these few patterns here is that there are so many things that hold symbolism and hold meaning for us. These are some symbols that hold meaning in a specific culture. And there are a lot of symbols out there that have universal meaning. There are a lot of symbols that have cultural meaning, but there are also a lot of symbols, a lot of icons, a lot of images that hold personal meaning too. And so I want to invite us to kind of pull that into our journaling process today. Now, I've talked about some different types of designs that are traditionally used and still used today. And feel free to kind of use those specific designs in our practice today, but know that you don't have to. Well, I want to invite us to really kind of personalize it and make it our own today. Hopping over to my hands, let's talk a little bit about the supplies that we'll use today, and then we'll get started. So first, you can use your journal or a piece of paper. I'm going to start off by using a piece of paper and add it to my journal when I'm done. So I'm going to be using a few pieces of paper today as my starting place. We'll also need some extra papers. So I'm bringing in the papers that we made a couple weeks ago in art journaling. If you don't have those papers or don't want to use those papers, know that that is completely okay. You can use whatever you have. If you have scrap paper, tissue paper, old artwork, magazine pages, different colored papers, feel free to bring those in. We'll be using that to kind of build our collage today. So we need our base paper that we're working on or our journal, and then we need our scrap papers or extra papers that we can collage on. The next thing we'll need is a pair of scissors. Now, a lot of times you can cut, and I often talk about tearing too. So feel free to tear. You don't have to use your scissors. But the next supply I want to mention is kind of our adhesive. You can use glue, any adhesive, or embroidery floss. You don't have to do the stitching. One of the things that I'll show today and kind of walk through today is that you can do mark making that kind of illustrates the same. So feel free to bring in thread, yarn, embroidery floss, or use a glue stick or any other glue or tape today. And then, of course, a pen or pencil. Feel free to bring in other colors too. If you have markers or crayons, colored pencils, anything like that is good as well. So just a quick reminder, we need our surface that we're going to work on, our base paper, extra paper to create that collage. We'll need scissors for cutting, and then our adhesive, whether it's the embroidery floss or the glue, and then a pen or pencil. So I want to start off by showing just a couple examples of how our piece may turn out. Now, it doesn't have to turn out this way. These are just a couple examples. So I've got one piece where I've kind of collaged material on and then actually done that embroidery, some stitching. I pulled in some of the traditional stitches to just kind of play around with it and just kind of get used to the stitching in and out on paper. And I also have one here, a little example of mark making. So it's still doing that type of stitching, but instead of using like a thread, a fiber to stitch through the paper, I used a pen to do some mark making. So this is what we're going to be kind of starting with today. But again, feel free to go in any direction. I'm going to start off by thinking about for me, I'm going to start off by thinking about some symbolism today. I talked about some of these different symbols that are used in the traditional Sashiko, but I want to invite us to think about other symbols for ourselves. A lot of the symbols that I talked about mentioned stability, resilience, longevity, protection. And so for me, I'm going to start off kind of thinking about the word before starting about that, like thinking about the image. And I think the words that I want to focus on today are going to be strength and growth. I think those are the two words that have kind of been in my mind the last couple weeks. And so that's what I'm going to focus on today in my making when I'm bringing my collage material in and also thinking about the marks that I'm going to be making. Now, when I think about strength, I often think about a symbol I think of as a root system, something that goes down deep, that holds and creates that kind of stability and resistance or resilience, right? That's something that's sturdy. So I'm thinking of maybe bringing roots into my mark making today. When I think about growth, of course, roots are something I think about, but I think about some ups and downs. And so that's a motion that I'm going to kind of use in my piece today. So thinking about that growth, where it's like let's say a little leaf that has roots growing down. That's what I'm going to use as my kind of symbol starting place. I'm going to think about the ups and downs that I mentioned. Sometimes things are easy, sometimes things are harder, sometimes life happens. And I think there's a lot of ups and downs. And I think what I want to kind of emphasize in my piece today is that there's a lot of growth and strength that comes from those kind of down moments. It's where growth happens. And so this is kind of the basic design I think I'm going to use for my piece today. Now you're welcome to follow along and do what I'm doing, or start in going off in your own direction too. That's also good. If you don't know what word or symbol or design you want to do, that's also okay. What I will say is a lot of sashiko, a lot of them, almost all patterns start with a running stitch. And a running stitch is just kind of that in and out, right? And so maybe what's most important today, maybe it isn't really about the symbolism, but it's about that repetition. And maybe there's a mark that you can make over and over again that feels good to you. What's really great about this practice is that it is, yes, a useful art practice, but it's also a mindful process. And mindfulness is all about just being present, being focused on what's right in front of you, not thinking about to-do lists or the what ifs, but it's focused on what's right in front of us. And so maybe today for you, it's not figuring out a design you want to mark. Maybe it is just the same pattern you want to repeat too. Know that that's a good way to spend this time as well. So I'm going to start off today, and I'm just going to kind of build my collage, thinking about these different papers that I have here, and just kind of gluing them down, fixing them to my paper, my base paper. So I'm going to start off thinking about the different elements, thinking about each of these elements as a different collage piece, right? So I'm going to start off, I'm going to do kind of green down here at the bottom. So I've got a little piece of green that I'm going to use. And then maybe a little yellow on the top, maybe a little blue. So you don't have to do just made old art pieces like I have here. You can use whatever material you have around you. I'm just going to go ahead and start collaging my material on, thinking about how I want to lay it out. Now, it doesn't have to be any which way. However you want to do it is good. But what I'm going to do is just start cutting little squares and collaging it on my paper here, laying down that base. Now, collage is very simply just piecing together things, taking things that don't normally go together and combining them in a way that feels good. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of cut things out. Got my little green here. Yeah. I'm going to add some more color. I'm just cutting those pieces. I'm thinking about mending and what mending kind of looks like. It's finding the right material, base material, collaging that on. I kind of like how simply this looks. So now that I have my pieces, I'm going to invite you to do the same. Once you figure out the pieces you want to collage, and maybe you have some other images that you want to do, maybe you want to focus on a certain color. And we've talked before how colors can also hold meaning. They can express feelings or ideas as well. So maybe you want to focus on just collaging together some different colors. It's a good place to start as well. And as I'm like gluing my pieces down here, I'm also thinking about symbolism that I want to add to my piece. Maybe this is a blessing or a wish, a hope I want to give myself. Maybe I'm thinking about someone else. I'm making this for a friend. Thinking about a wish or a blessing that I want to share with them. I love that, this practice of Sashiko is not all about just the mending, that it's so much deeper and there's more to it. It's something that carries meaning. So I think mine looks good here. I think that's a good start for mine. Maybe where I want to go. I'm just going to take a moment to kind of look and see if I want to add more to it. I don't know if I want to do more. Sometimes the hardest part with collage is knowing when to stop or where to stop. So I'm just going to kind of take a moment to go through some of the different papers that I have collected here to see if there's something else I want to add to it. I think my piece looks good. I've just got a few pieces here. Now, today, I'm going to do some mark making. I'm going to be drawing my stitches on here. But if you have embroidery floss or yarn or thread that you want to add to your piece, know that you can do that too. You can do that instead of the mark making. I'll pull my example here just for a second. When I went to do the embroidery, one of the things that I did first was take my needle and poke the hole through. So I decided the lines that I wanted before I even started the embroidery process. And so if you are wanting to stitch through paper, one of the things that I would suggest is taking your tapestry needle and finding where you want that hole to be and then pressing into it. I know needles can be a little hard on our fingers. So if you have a thimble or maybe a measuring spoon or something like that that you can use to press through it, that's good. That's a helpful way to start. And then once you have your holes figured out, you can do that embroidery. Again, it doesn't have to be embroidery. Sometimes that mark making is perfect. And I think that's what I'm going to be doing today is just that mark making. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to do my little design here. I'm going to start off by doing my ups and downs. And so I'm just going to kind of make those lines. And just kind of follow through. I'm going to do 3 of them. I think I'm going to do 3. 3 holds a lot of meaning for me. It's a number that I find in my life often. It feels like my number. And so that's what I'm going to use here. I'm going to do 3 rows. That feels special to me. As you're doing this kind of mark making, the embroidery, whatever shape you're coming up with, whatever design you're coming up with, I want to invite you to take your time with it. I'm kind of bringing in my different elements here and just kind of drawing over my pieces, thinking about that leaf shape. Creating these little stitch marks inside. Know that whatever you do, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not about perfection. It's about the intention behind it. Maybe it doesn't feel good to do those stitches. Maybe it feels good to make those marks. That's what I want to invite us to kind of be present, be focused on what's right in front of us, and know that it doesn't have to be any certain thing. This is just kind of playing around with the idea of intention and symbolism. I'm just using scraps that I have around me. I think this was a watercolor paper and then some papers that I dyed a couple weeks ago in our art journaling series. What I'm going to do here is kind of change my mark making. I did my dark colors for the symbol that I wanted to kind of show off. So I'm going to go to like a smaller pen and kind of add to my piece. Maybe thinking about that same mark making, that same movement, but I've got more of an emphasis on those main lines. And I do want to encourage, this is a mindful practice, whether you're stitching or making those marks, it is a mindful practice. So I do want to encourage just kind of taking your time with it. You may be like me, in that taking your time is something that's hard to do. When I get excited about anything, I always start picking up speed and going faster. I'm enjoying it. And the truth is, honestly, any speed you go is good. It doesn't have to be a slow pace. But I do think there is something beneficial about kind of slowing down. Again, not something that we have to do. Um, Life is so fast paced, but it's good to kind of take those moments that invite us to slow down and just be present. I'm thinking about specific symbolism for my piece here, something that I want to just kind of emphasize for me, thinking about strength and growth. But it doesn't have to be the symbolism too. Symbolism can be the image itself, but it could also be the time spent doing it. Right? It doesn't have to be a specific mark. It can just be the process of making the mark. I mentioned earlier, if you don't know the mark that you want to make, the pattern, the image that you want to do, that's okay. Almost every design, Sashiko pattern or design, starts with that running stitch, which is just a line of dashes. You can see that's something that I'm utilizing here, just doing that line of dashes. And I think sometimes we can kind of cut out specific shapes that we want to highlight. I could have cut my green shape in that curve. I could have turned that yellow specifically into the leaf. I could have, but I can also just kind of make that drawing on top of it, stitch all those pieces together through my mark making instead of doing that literal applique. Again, I just want to emphasize that it's not about the specific image design that you're doing, right? That process of mindfulness is what's most important here. I think there's something that's really lovely, really special about looking at other traditions and practices different from different cultures around the world. It's a way to honor those traditions. It's a way to pull inspiration from makers who came before us. Um, but it's also just this really wonderful way to connect to history. People have been doing this process, this stitching, for generations. I think it became, Sashiko specifically, became popular during the Edo period, which was like, what, the 1600s through mid 1800s-ish, mid to late 1800s. So it's something that's been around for a while. So there are a lot of people who have experienced and done this process. We're connecting to people and history for generations, which is really cool. And again, when we look at traditions like this, or even other like making traditions, like perfection is not the goal, right? It's about finding beauty in the making, finding beauty in this case in the mending, knowing that it doesn't have to be like anything else that anyone is doing. It's about this kind of mark making. Just about kind of being present and doing the making. Bring in for the rest of my drawing here. I think I'm going going to bring in one of the traditional Sashiko mark making, which is that kind of T shape. I feel like that may represent kind of a skyline, but also it's something that represents growth, traditionally has represented growth. So I'm going to fill the top side here with my little X's, my T's. And just like the example that we saw of the waves specifically, they don't have to be exactly the same size or shape. They can be different numbers. They can be different sizes. They can be a little off center, and that's okay. Today we're working on mark making, and we're using whatever writing utensil or embroidery floss to help us with that mark making. We're pulling inspiration from a tradition that's been around for a long time. Like I said, connecting with history. And so I'm just kind of filling my space, thinking about the symbolism and what it means to me. And also just like knowing that this process can feel soothing. Anytime we're doing something that involves repetition, it can put us in this state of a soothing state, relaxed state. And I think there's something that's really nice about that. There are a lot of art processes that feel good to do. And I'm just going to take my time. Fill in those spaces. Again, not worried about getting it exactly the same, getting it right. Because again, that's not what's important today. We just want to kind of take our time with our mark making. And I also want to emphasize too, when we're talking about the symbolism behind these marks or these images. But the truth is, you don't even have to do that. This is a time for you to make whatever you need it to be. Okay, so if you're working on yours, definitely continue to do that. Have some fun doing that mark making. Know that it can be filled with those marks, with those stitches, or it can be kind of on its own. It's all good. Focusing on whatever area feels good to you. And again, it's not really about that finished piece, making it perfect. It's about the intention. Our goal is to have this process that feels good, that maybe feels soothing, but also can represent something to us as well.
Thanks so much for joining us in our creative space. Now, don't forget, like and subscribe so you can be notified about our future videos. And happy making, everyone!